Welcome to White Widow Sports, your front row seat to all things sports. Whether it's the biggest plays, the hottest takes, or the stories behind the stats, we've got you covered. From the plays, athletes, fantasy football, or just random sports, we're breaking it all down with passion, precision, and plenty of debate. So lace up, grab your gear, and let's get into it.
They said we wouldn't make it this far. I don't know who they is, but if you don't have any haters, you're not doing something right. We have made it to episode 3 here on White Widow Sports. This is our weekly podcast. Thank you again, real quick, to everybody for all the support, all the feedback that we've gotten. We can't say thank you enough. It's been a ride so far. Chris, how's your week been? What's been going on with you?
Oh, the week's been interesting. Sciatic nerve pain is something that apparently you can't just get over on your own sometimes. So you got some pain or something going on your leg, get yourself to the ER and get checked out. And I'm happy to announce that I'm doing good and I can walk like a champ.
Brian, what about you? What's new in your world?
Um, work, and more work. This has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed White Widow Sports and what we're doing here. Getting to hang out with you guys, a couple of times a week is awesome. Um, but not a lot different going on week to week. I am planning on playing golf here in a little bit, so I'm excited about that. The weather's kind of shaping up, so it's not too hot, not too cold. So it's a good time to get out and actually play some sports instead of talking about them. So, um, with that, I do want to give my condolences, and the rest of the team kind of feels the same way. We want to give our condolences and thoughts, prayers to the family, friends, and everybody involved in the plane crash up in D.C. Very, very sad moment. It did involve several figure skaters and athletes, coaches alike, a lot of family members. A very, very sad situation. So, really want to give thoughts and prayers out to them in this hard time. But what do you guys say we get right into this? So,
Yeah.
want to start off with a little golf news. Some cool stuff happened the other day. I think it was Thursday. Rory McIlroy is playing in the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro Am, and actually hit a hole in one, which is really, really cool. Really, really hard to do. I've been playing golf my whole life, never hit one. So, I think he's only hit two or three in his professional career. So, congrats to him. That's awesome. I think it was a 119-yard shot. Um, it's really fun to watch the reaction of the fans and the players when somebody does hit a hole in one. I know Charlie Woods hit one in the father son or the pro golfer family member tournament a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't even know he hit one. So crowd went crazy. It was awesome. So congrats to Roy on that. I also did hear some rumors that he is not going to be participating as many tournaments this year, which I think is actually a good thing. I love to see Rory play. I think he's a great golfer, but the slowdown on the schedule might be conducive into he plays a lot better at the ones that he's going to play in. I know Tiger Woods several years back kind of did the same thing where he slowed down in how many he played and ended up getting on a big hot streak. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. In the YouTube golf world, some big news broke this week on Rick Shield out of England. He actually has joined with Live in some kind of capacity, and most people wouldn't think that would be a big deal, but his viewership dropped like 20,000 people or 20,000 subs in like a day, which is huge for a YouTuber because obviously that's how he makes his money. Um, I'm not sure what the big drawback was. I know there's a lot of people, they either are okay with Live because of where it got formed, and a lot of people say it's blood money and things of that nature. And they do not look highly on women and stuff like that. There's a lot of people that just throw a lot of hate towards Live, and it's diehard PGA. I actually think it's good for the sport, and the fact that you know it's a little different way of playing golf. They've got music on the course. They're trying to make it more enjoyable for the fans. It's not go out there, everything's quiet. You give the little golf clap that nobody can hear. That's just not what golf is now. So it's almost like Live is trying to merge what people enjoy about YouTube golf with like a professional PGA event. So my take on it, I wish they were a little bit more fair for women, and actually get women more involved into letting them be on teams and stuff like that. But we'll see how that goes. I know there's a lot of talks with PGA and Live and trying to get them combined and stuff like that. So we'll just kind of keep a follow on that story as it trends throughout the year. And right now, golf they've had a couple of tournaments, but they haven't been big tournaments. You've got um, several big ones coming up, but I know as a fan, I really don't start watching them until like the Waste Management tournament, which has the fun stadium hole, and there's a lot of fanfare around that. So we'll see. That's kind of what I've got in the golf world today. Um, Brad, what do you got maybe in basketball?
Well, before we get to basketball, just to kind of touch back on what you were talking about, with the whole Live and the drawback from that. Obviously, I wish that I had 20,000 subscribers to lose on YouTube. So, guys, tell your friends about us. We want more subscribers. Like and comment below if you like hearing us talk about sports. We appreciate all of that. But joking aside, obviously, Chris and I are kind of the wrestling fans on the channel. And I'm sure he's heard a lot of the same comments when the WWE started doing shows in Saudi Arabia. There was a lot of that
Yeah.
drawback. Well, are you going to have women on the shows? What are they going to be allowed to wear, if at all? There's been actual employees, some pro wrestlers that refuse to go to the shows and participate because of religious beliefs or political beliefs, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
And so that blood money term does get tossed around a good bit, even in that circle. Um, but I mean, it was just one of those things where anytime you get the idea or the perception behind a company that does not care what its viewers actually want, I think you've got an issue. And so to have a company like Live that's saying, okay, we're going to go out and we're going to bring in this guy that knows the YouTube side of things and what makes that audience tune in, even if he's brought in just as like just a knowledge perspective to say this is what they like, this is what I see, and they can integrate that in the sport. It shows that they're wanting to bring in more of an audience. So if that becomes a successful link between them, then good on that. And then as
And
far
that's
as
a
Roy
good that's a
McIlroy,
good point.
yeah, and I was going to bring up, I was actually going to bring up the Charlie Woods thing as well. You mentioned that he didn't know he hit it. Worse than that, his father, Tiger Woods, didn't know he hit it. Tiger was, I think, talking to a caddy or somebody on the side. The crowd erupts, and he turns around like, "What happens?" And Charlie's like, "I hit a hole in one." They have like a great moment, cool father and son moment. But Tiger
Absolutely.
actually missed it too, which I thought was funny. I remember when that happened. But somebody who won't be making a hole in one in the near future is Jimmy Butler. Um, we know that he walked out of practice on Monday after being informed that he was going to be benched. So he is now being suspended for a third time. It's an indefinite suspension. I think they said at least 6 games. All eyes are on February 6th. That's coming up at the end of this coming week. That is the trade deadline for the NBA. Chris, what are your thoughts on this and the whole Jimmy Butler Heat situation?
Oh, it's quite a mess. I think it goes back a few years, even to lesser degrees. He's just had clashes with management, and I think he's had a little bit of problems everywhere he's been. Let's see, I've got a timeline here. On January 2nd, he actually requested a trade. January 3rd, he got suspended 7 games. January 2nd, suspended for another 2 games for missing a team flight. And yes, of course, now he is suspended through the trade deadline for walking out of practice. Looks like the issues with the Heat include a clash of personality with Pat Riley. They were once close and full of respect, but it looks like both sides think that a trade is the only resolution here. Let's see. Butler seemingly wants to have a bigger contract, which he thinks he can get elsewhere. Some of his teammates in Miami have already gotten those contracts, and for him to be left out, he feels a bit slighted. Some of the trade rumors that I have heard about was, let me check my notes here real quick. The Suns, the Pelicans, and the Warriors. The Warriors are trying to get a key player, go Steph Curry and Draymond Green. But the Suns have actually been pursuing him quite aggressively, even before he publicly said he wanted to trade, or right at the time he said he wanted to trade. He wants to be on a team he can compete for a championship right now. So that would obviously be one. The Warriors would be one that he would be looking at. Pelicans have been a little less aggressive, but they have at least a little bit of interest because of Brandon Ingram's expiring contract. So they'd like to get someone in there. These are some notable numbers right here. His contract actually carries a $48.8 million cap hit for this season. And next season, there is a $52.4 million player option for 2025-26. He's 35 years old. He's a 6-time All-Star. He's made the finals, I believe, twice in his career. Most recently in 2023, where they made it as an 8 seed to take on the Nuggets, where they eventually lost 4-1. I'd add him to a team that you think is on the verge, but I feel like I don't know. He's clashed with some people everywhere he's gone. Either of you have thoughts on if he's maybe worth the hassle? I mean, he's obviously talent-wise worth the hassle, but like, is he going to get into somewhere new? Is he just going to start clashing with management? Is he going to walk out of practices? Like, I don't know. What are you getting yourself into when you take on a guy like this? And you've seen it in several sports. So does anybody have any examples maybe where they took a chance? Terrell Owens maybe comes to mind. I know wide receivers definitely come to mind in another sport. Is it worth the risk, especially with the big cap hit and all that?
Well, I think when you get to this level of sports, you're looking at players that want to bet on themselves. You've seen players that are actually willing to take pay cuts for the eventual pay increase because they believe that their talent is there. I mean, they don't call him Hemi Butler for nothing. He shows up on big stages. He's made it to the playoffs and just taken over games. He has single-handedly won games for the Heat. And other players around him have gotten the deals that he thought that he was entitled to. And so I think it's just a fractured relationship. I'm not saying he's perfect or professional in any stretch of the imagination, but I think that in some instances his feelings are validated because he does feel like he's not getting what he feels he's entitled to when compared to some of his peers. So he automatically makes a contender a favorite. I think when you add that level of talent, I know his preferred destination is the Suns. The Suns are trying to work something out to get rid of Bradley Beal because he has the most untradeable contract in the entire NBA. So I know finances are what's really holding back that deal right now. I do think we see something happen by February 6th. I think it's just too toxic of an environment. It's not good for any of the players. It's not good for the team, for management, or anything like that. So I do think we see something going, even before we record next week, we should have an update on this.
Yeah.
I mean, I always relate everything back to football just because that's what I know most of all. But Bill Belichick actually made a portion of his career. Of course, everybody always attributes his success to Tom Brady. They kind of go hand in hand. But how many of those Super Bowl teams were held up by players that other teams did not want. Just people that were considered head cases or not worth the trouble. He would bring them in and say, look, I'm not going to put up with your way. You're here because your way didn't work for you. Now you're going to do things my way. And then he would get more out of them for less money. He actually had a whole season where Cam Newton was brought in on a 1-year super cheap contract and got a good number of starts there. And that was a quarterback like nobody had ever seen in the Belichick system. But it was just somebody like Cam that was willing to take a bet on himself to try to earn another contract. But Brian, what do you think about it? I know you're not really a basketball guy, but just as far as troublesome players, you've seen a lot of them in your lifetime.
Yeah. And I can't remember his name. Y'all may be able to help me. There was a wide receiver. I think the last place he played was New England as well, under that Belichick scheme where he just bad attitude. He made a mess out of his life. I wish I could remember his
Is it
name.
Antonio Brown?
Is it Antonio Brown?
There you go. That's him. It was always in the news, always getting in trouble, just always something. And I don't think he ever revived his career to be what it could have been, but I do think he had some brilliant moments left in him. You know, you got to look at it as, is it the money that's doing it? Is it because players are getting paid now more than they ever have in the past. It's, I've said it to both of you. I've said it to other friends. It's almost getting where it's unaffordable to go to just a regular game. So is that what's contributing? We saw it, I know here in a little bit, we're going to talk about some coaches and who's where and what's going on with that. But, I think the players have too much power, and it comes out with their attitude. And you're seeing this with this guy is, I don't know a lot about basketball. I don't watch it. I looked up this Butler story, but it's, to me, when I play sport, you got to have the love for the game first, and not so much
Marley's
of the
certainly
money.
not
And I
happy
think
about
that's kind of what it's bringing in. What was that, Chris?
I said Marley's certainly not happy about it. Brad's child, as you can see on the screen here. She certainly is not happy with these selfish players. And
I agree with her.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Antonio Brown was the one, if I'm not mistaken, just walked off mid-game, right?
Yeah.
Brad? I think hailed a cab and, and went along his way. And so, yeah.
But you see it. I mean, even, I know there's been a lot of speculation, and I don't want to throw a lot of shade his way.
No.
But the quarterback for Atlanta this year, he was doing great, and then all of a sudden it just dropped like a brick. Now, is that because of him, or was he just unhappy with the situation? What does that kind of fall in line with this? Oh, I don't like it here. I want to be traded, so I'm just not going to perform. I'm not going to go to practice. I'm not going to, and I'm going to throw a 2-year-old tantrum. I think you see a lot of that. And unfortunately, I almost think you're going to start seeing that in college. Oh, I don't have a starting spot. I'm just going to enter the transfer portal and go over here, and it kind of ruins a little bit of, with football and college football, because back when I fell in love with college football, once you committed to a team, you were committed to the team. And that's kind of the way I wanted to bring my son up to. Once you make that commitment, you finish the drill. Don't matter how crappy the situation is or how crappy the coach is, because the rest of us live lives like that. I don't want to get too preachy here, but if I don't like a situation, I don't have the means to just walk off, like a 2-year-old. I need to either change the situation on my own or deal with it, because it is what it is.
And you mentioned Kirk Cousins. I'm not sure that's his situation yet. That could very well be his situation. It remains to be seen. whether he was unhappy or didn't fit in good with the system. But I think there's a difference in what his struggles that he has going on and Jimmy Butler legit just saying, I'm out of here, dude. Like, just trade me. Oh, you're gonna bench me, then I'm walking out of practice. I don't know. I feel like you're just an athlete in the grand scheme of things. You're not running a Fortune 500 company. You are playing with similar money, but there's got to be some level of professionalism. And, he's a great player. So I actually hope it works out for him. I'd like to see him handle things a little more professionally. And maybe that goes both ways. Maybe the coaches are behind the scenes here acting very immature themselves. And then you can't put as much of it on Jimmy Butler. I think we'll know a lot more here pretty soon.
Sure.
Well, I mean, they always say there's two sides to every story. I don't think it can be appreciated enough that we start talking about a player throwing a 2-year-old tantrum and the podcast gets their introduction to my 2-year-old throwing a tantrum. So Marley's first appearance on the podcast is doing a Jimmy Butler impression. I'm kidding. But like I said, there's two sides to every story. The truth a lot of times lies somewhere in between. Obviously, Jimmy Butler can be made to look like the bad guy in this situation, but we don't know what he's going through, on his side of things, how he's being treated and things of that nature. But I do think that his conduct being labeled detrimental to the team, I think that's fitting. We've seen that before. Nothing new there. But I mean, not every player is always looking to get into a better situation. Sometimes they just need a fresh start. One player that I think we could label that with is Brittney Griner. Kind of big news coming out of the WNBA is that she has signed a 1-year deal. We don't have a contract figure for that yet. I suspect it'll come out sometime today. I think today is the first day that contracts can actually be signed in the WNBA. So maybe we'll have numbers on that soon. But Brittney Griner, 34 years old. She's a 6'9" center. She's played 11 seasons in the WNBA. Of those 11 seasons, she's a 10-time All-Star and 6-time All-WNBA. Obviously, this is a welcome addition to the dream. Chris, what do you think about it? I know you're kind of really in on this story and what it can mean for Atlanta.
I am, and I've got a lot to say here, so I'm just going to get into it. I don't really care to talk about the Russia prison thing or any of the political stuff at this time. So I want to focus on the good stuff. What I do care about is probably my favorite women's basketball player of all time. When I first heard of her as a high schooler, a little after I left high school myself, I was pretty impressed by her viciousness. I've always been a fan of power forwards and centers in basketball, more so than the 3-point shooters that people seem to all want to be like today. So to find a female playing like Sean Kemp or even Shaq was something I was pretty drawn to instantly. I do want to list off some records that she actually holds in her career, while maybe not even getting a lot of the praise in the media from it, as of lately at least. In the NCAA for blocks in a season, she had 223, which is crazy. In her NCAA career, she had 748 and is the only NCAA player to score 2,000 points and block 500 shots. She's also a 2012 NCAA national champion with 40-0 Baylor. Amazing. She's the only player to dunk in a WNBA regular season game since 2008. She has 18 dunks in her WNBA career and has led the lead in blocks 8 times. She's also a 2014 WNBA champion with the Phoenix Mercury, which I'm not sure if you had mentioned, Brad, as well. She also has 3 gold medals with the women's Olympics team, which I guess is not all that impressive, not to take away from her, because the USA in women's basketball has dominated. They've gone 12 times and won 10 gold medals. You see a very similar thing with the men. It's bigger news if they don't win the gold medal. So, all those accolades, eat your heart out, Caitlin Clark. And yeah, I am just joking. So calm down, Caitlin Clark lovers. I'm sure here in 10 years or so, she'll have a great resume to go along with this, albeit just a little different because she plays a different position. All this said, after spending her entire career with the Phoenix Mercury, and some overseas teams in the offseason to make a little extra cash. I feel like she can definitely add something unteachable in women's basketball, and that's like Brad said, 6'9", and she has a wingspan of 7'4". Sure, she has probably lost some of her athleticism due to from that she had in her younger years, but I think she's still going to dominate in rebounding and blocks. Maybe even throw down a dunk or two to excite the fans. All that said, she'll look to add something to the Atlanta Dream squad that went 15-25 last season and lost in the first round of the playoffs. What that something is that she'll add, I'm not quite sure yet, but she should at least add some size to assist. Now, forgive me on this first name, Reen Howard, who was the 2022 #1 overall pick out of Kentucky at guard, who led the team in points per game, assists per game, and steals per game in 2024. It certainly won't hurt to add Griner's game in the paint, and I'm interested to see how it works out.
Yeah, and I think if anybody was worried about her being washed talent-wise, being 34 years old, if you just look at her numbers from 2024, she was averaging almost 18 points a game, over 6 rebounds per game, and 1.5 blocks per game. You mentioned a lot of her block numbers, especially in her collegiate career, but she currently is third all-time in blocks in WNBA history. I think she's 65 away from the lead, averaging 1.5 blocks per game. It's not out of the realm of possibility for her to get into that top spot, which at this point I think is probably going to be that next big domino that she's chasing. I definitely think she can still play. At this point, she's a walking no. I mean, you block that many shots, she's just physically dominant. And I think she's got the kind of stature that what she lacks in athleticism potentially at this stage of her career, she's going to make up for just in her dominating side. She's still going to be able to do a lot of things great that most players just aren't equipped to stop. So I'm excited to see what she can do. And shout out to the WNBA for allowing a team to go 15-25 and still make the playoffs. That's insane to me. And the team that the Dream lost to last year ended up being the champions of 2024 in New York. So maybe we're not that far off from being an actual contender. Who knows what this Griner thing could really attribute to our success. I think we had another big signing. Alicia came in. Gray maybe is her last name. I'm blanking on that right now. But some big talent coming to Atlanta. They could be making waves. Brian, did you have any thoughts on this? Or
Well, I don't really have any thoughts on this. I mean, hopefully she is a good addition for Atlanta. I do. There is some other big news that came out this week in the WNBA. Angel Reese, we all know her, the whole clash in college, and that was a lot of fun to watch. Who was the better player? But she is the first female athlete to sign a meal deal with McDonald's. Now, I don't know that there's been any figures about you know, how much she's going to make from this, but they actually have a Angel Reese special meal just for her. So congrats to her and keeping the name in the spotlight. And I'm not sure what that meal entails. Not a big McDonald's guy, but props to her.
Yeah, we can certainly look into it. I'm also not a big McDonald's guy, but if given the chance to do some research, I'll throw down and work it off later in the gym should my leg allow me to. Doctor's orders, no workouts for the rest of this week. So
yeah, I mean, my first thought was it didn't matter who the athlete was that signed that deal with McDonald's. I'm probably not participating. It has nothing to do with Angel Reese or anything like that.
Sure.
I just don't like McDonald's, so
Right.
probably won't be getting the deal, but who knows?
Yeah, McDonald's ain't gonna love this, are they? Sorry, McDonald's. You're not usually praised.
Hey,
hashtag obviously not a sponsor.
Yeah, obviously not a sponsor.
We will literally sit here and film ourselves eating the Angel Reese meal if they want to sponsor us. But
yeah, we will sell out. Don't get us wrong, McDonald's. But as far as healthy, conscious people who just don't want to shave years off their lives, there's certainly other ways to do that and more tasty avenues.
Also, Taco Bell, not a sponsor yet, but hit me up.
All right. Anybody else got anything? WNBA, NBA.
I think that'll do it for us.
There's no real baseball news yet. We haven't started spring, so looking forward to that here in the next couple of months. So do we want to move over to the NFL?
Sounds good.
And let's talk about what we saw last weekend in the conference championships.
Well, I've heard from some of our loyal subscribers and fans that they have really been looking forward to this particular segment of the podcast. So I'm going to make them wait a little bit longer. I'm going to talk about the other game. Philadelphia actually did to Washington what I thought Detroit might do to Washington. They ended the Cinderella story. I know going back and listening to last week's episode of our podcast, one of the things that we talked about was Philadelphia is a very good team. They're well rounded. We know that they've got offensive playmakers. We know that they've got defensive playmakers. And what was really going to shape the way this team or the way this game worked out was if the Washington defense was able to stop the Philadelphia offense the same way that we thought the Philadelphia defense could stop the Washington offense. That was an astounding what we saw. Philadelphia putting up 55 points. They scored 7 rushing touchdowns. Saquon and Jalen Hurts each had 3 rushing touchdowns. And then rookie out of Clemson, Will Shipley, he also added on a score late in the game to make it 7 total rushing touchdowns. Hurts also had a passing touchdown as well, so 4 total for him. But what did y'all think about that game and what you saw from the Eagles as they head to their next Super Bowl appearance?
I thought that was an amazing performance. We did all predict the Eagles to win that one. Whether we saw it coming like this, I'm not so sure about that. We knew Saquon would do his thing, but I'm not sure we saw a big blowout. And while I was doing my looking at the numbers for this one, I almost strayed too far off topic. But are you seeing? I know they had some close games, but are you seeing a team get really hot at the perfect time right now, or did they just run into a Cinderella whose time was up? I think about Ohio State getting in their playoffs, getting real hot and running through everyone. Obviously, the Eagles have had some close games, so it's not exactly the same. But when you're coming off a 55 to 23 win, 7 rushing touchdowns, a decent defensive performance too, does that carry you into the Super Bowl in a big way with a whole lot of confidence? I like to think it does. I'm not making a prediction yet, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that particular game, Brian.
Yeah, I think Barkley for the last few games of the season just went totally nuts. I know they set him that regular season. They kind of set him that last game, so you didn't really see that. But I mean, even before that, you could almost see him get like super hot, really starting to believe and getting that confidence. Not in himself. I think he's always had confidence in himself. Um, but I think he's starting to trust his linemen, trust the holes, trust the concept from the coaches. So and in that gives him a lot of confidence. So I think you're seeing it all come down at the right time. Same thing with Jalen Hurts. He's been with the team a little bit longer than Barkley, but he's still into the season he's trusting it. He's trusting the process. So I think it's fun football to watch. It's good. I never want to see a blowout like that, and I really deep down was rooting for the Commanders, but at the end of the day, I knew Philadelphia they're too hot. They're too good right now.
Well, I think what you saw from Philadelphia is that they flexed their muscle. So to answer Chris's question of, is this a team that's getting hot? I don't think so. I think Philadelphia has always been capable of being this good, but we've seen them be in the driver's seat of their own destiny for a large portion of this. I mean, obviously they didn't get the 1 seed. The Lions kind of took that one by, I think, a game in the regular season, but Philadelphia has almost at times been nonchalant in some of their games. in that they kind of knew that they were going to win. I mean, you see their players reading books on the sidelines. It almost seems like they're disinterested because they already know the outcome. They almost expect to win games, and they got up because they were playing a division rival in a conference championship game. They really made a statement of, you're not going to be able to stop this brand of football that we have perfected and made famous over the last few years. I know one of the storylines coming into this season was, you know, are the Eagles going to be able to do the things that they did with Jason Kelsey at center, notably the brotherly shove or tush push, whatever you want to call it? Is that still going to be effective without Kelsey? Was he the driving force behind that play? Well, yeah, I'm not saying all of his rushing touchdowns have come this way, but Jalen Hurts putting up 3 rushing touchdowns in a playoff game still shows you that there is a certain level of uh, difficulty in stopping that. And so, I mean, I just think that they flexed their muscle. They did something that they said, you can't stop us from doing this. And I think it is good momentum for Philadelphia, but I don't think it's necessarily a sleeping giant that just woke up. I think that they just, at every stage, they're doing what they need to do and trying to stay healthy along the way.
Yep. I agree. But that tush push, I mean, you're seeing that every team use that. So I don't, and it's effective. If you need a yard, that's a cheap way to get a yard, or not a cheap way, but an effective way of getting that 1 yard that you need.
Both.
And you're seeing it, you know, I don't know that you see it as much in college. I think you will start to see that, that 4th and 1 or that 3rd and 1. That's an effective play to reset the downs. Um, I think you saw, if you watch a lot of high school football, especially around where I live, you see it a lot around here as well. You get that it's a simple play with not a lot of mechanics to it. So, you know, as long as you get a good snap and a good push, it's an easy way to gain a yard.
Well, a lot of times it's saying it's my guys versus your guys. My
Yeah.
guys know exactly what the play call is. My guys know exactly when the ball's being snapped, and they're just taking that offensive advantage. I mean, when I played in high school, I did play snaps on offense and defense, but the thought that I always had, my preference was, I didn't like defense because I was not a good athlete. I did not want to have to react and then try to make up to what I was seeing in front of me. I always preferred playing on the offensive line because I like knowing what the play call was. I like knowing what my assignment was. When we break the huddle and we look and we see that defensive alignment, a lot of it was just scheme based of, I know that because there's a defensive end lined up here, it's this type of block. And it was just up to me to execute that block. And yeah, I always like knowing that. And it gives that edge to the offense. A perfect offensive play beats a perfect defensive play every time. A perfect throw beats perfect coverage. And I think the Eagles have just seen that we know when we put our guys against your guys, even though you know what's coming, you're still not going to be able to stop us. But not everybody can perform it to the same level that they do. Because my question to you guys next is, how much? How much? How much does it cost to get a first down? Because Josh Allen, for all of his millions, could not buy a first down against Kansas City. Chris, I want your thoughts.
So my thoughts are not going to be pandering as much to I know our fans that want me to trash the refs completely. They do deserve some level of trashing. I think we all saw a first down for the Bills on that one play. You all know which one I'm talking about, everyone watching and listening. The commentator said, I believe we have a first down there. Looks like we have a first down there. They said, no, we're gonna keep it here. And I think I was texting one of you, if not both of you, and I said, yeah, it's close. Let's at least see where the measurement is. They didn't even come out to measure it. And I said, oh, what's the deal with that? And arguably with his size, I think Josh Allen's better than Jalen Hurts at doing that sort of thing. Maybe they haven't run it as long or they're not as known for it, but Josh Allen's a big boy and he can actually put some force behind it. to where Jalen Hurts, I feel like, and I've seen his weight room pictures. I know he's a strong guy too, but he can't put the same amount of force behind it. So I feel like it's actually got a better chance of working with a larger athlete like that. As far as the calls as a whole, I'll probably put the gloves on more than anyone on here. So maybe it is good to go first with me here. I think that despite the refs, Kansas City played a great game. So you can't place it all on the refs. They got their openings, they got their shots, they obviously have a good team. They wouldn't be where they're at on refs alone. I think that I think that it's notable that they have gotten a lot of calls that maybe led to wins that would have been losses. They still would have been a playoff team, and they may still have been in this situation. Um, Josh Allen's a beast. He'll be back. He'll never quit. He has the heart of a champion. He's going to get that championship at some point. So I'm not going to place all blames on the refs. I think Kansas City played a good enough game to win. I think it's unfortunate that a few things were decided by the refs. Now, you two, please take the gloves off and go nuts.
There's no love lost between me and refs, especially when it comes to Kansas City. I never think a referee should determine the outcome of a game. You saw it with the Commanders game where he kept jumping over the line when they were doing one of the tush pushes. They knew it was coming. Linebacker or safety, I think it may have been the safety, kept trying to jump the snap count because, like Brad said earlier, the defense doesn't know when that snap count's coming. So all you can do sometimes is guess. For the ref to come out and say, if you keep on, I'm just gonna award them points.
You might as
Come on now,
well.
get a. I get it, you can do it, but I don't know. You got your 5 seconds of fame. I don't
Yeah.
know. I just don't like it when it comes to Kansas City. Their calls always go their way. Come on now. And I was gonna look up the stats of how many calls were against Buffalo and how many fouls were against the Chiefs. What's the ratio here? And I'm not talking about just movement, 5-yard penalties. I'm talking about the whole gamut. How many 15-yard penalties did Buffalo get to how many 15-yard penalties did the Chiefs get? How many first downs did they get awarded because of something that really didn't exist? And that's been all year. I'm not just talking about this Buffalo game. I'm talking about all year long. It's been like that for Kansas City. Quit trying to dictate who wins the football game. I don't tune in on Sunday to see the black and white shirts. I don't. I don't want to see you. I want to see football. I want to see real football. Do I think they need a job there? Yes. You have to keep it has to be an organized sport. You have to keep the rules. But am I there to see you call or dictate the outcome of a game? Absolutely not. So I think the NFL and Roger Goodell should take a hard look at the referees and see, is there a bias or an unbiased decision there? Are they uh, basically doing the outcomes of the game? If they are, you need to fire them. You need to get rid of them, get some different refs in there, so on and so forth. I don't think it's at all levels of the game. I don't think you see this in high school. I know we all have a friend who is a referee. Shout out Kyle. I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Um, it would be interesting to get his take on it because he's gonna see it uh, at the high school level, and I'm sure he's watching it at the college and pro level. For him doing that job, how does it compare? I'd love to get his take on that someday.
Well, I mean, I think just to kind of combine what you two were saying, Chris touched on this. Nobody's trying to take anything away from the Chiefs and the talent that they have.
Hmm.
In fact, when I was talking about the Eagles trying to not necessarily coast their way, but they knew they would be here. They were preparing all year long to be at this stage of the game. And we actually saw similar stories with Travis Kelce coming in this season. He was not having big productive games. It made a lot of people mad in the fantasy football world, but they were relying on their younger guys. They had Rashee Rice before his injury. They had just used a first round pick on Xavier Worthy. They were trying to get him acclimated to the pro game. They lost Isaiah Pacheco. They brought in Kareem Hunt. They were basically trying to win in other ways besides having to rely on Kelce, because Kelce is getting older. He's got some mileage. He's taken big hits and things of that nature. They were trying to preserve him for this run because the teams that know that they're good, they are trying to preserve themselves for this run. And so the Chiefs are a good enough team to win or lose on their own merit. I think the frustration with a lot of people comes in is when they see that bias at saying, why is this necessary? If the Chiefs are as good as what we believe they are and what they are paraded to be, especially in the media, then why do they need this unfair advantage already tacked on to where their opponents almost feel like, well, I mean, Brian said it a couple weeks ago, you can beat any team across from you, but when they have the refs on their side, it's almost impossible to beat those. And so
Sure.
it's one of those where Philadelphia kind of did that with Washington. You see it in the UFC. If you don't want to lose a decision, don't leave it in the hands of the judges. You can think that you just beat the brakes off of a guy for 15 minutes and then find yourselves at the other end of a decision loss. And so it's like, don't leave it up to the refs. When you score 7 rushing touchdowns and you win by 32 points, there's not a call that the refs could make that could cost you that game at that point.
Very
They would have to award a lot of touchdowns to the other team to keep up with that. And so I think with Kansas City, and the reason why people think that there's a lot of conspiracy around them to get them to this stage, to push them to the Super Bowl, even looking at the spread, I think it was a 2.5 point game and they won by 3. It's like, okay, well, we knew it was going to be a good game. We knew it was going to be a close game. The line dictates that, but it's hard to feel like Kansas City wasn't assisted to that 3-point win. Everybody on the broadcast said it was a first down. We were expecting Buffalo to get that chance to go down and make a play to win that game. I think some people might have been expecting overtime. I just feel like we are robbed of a better finish than what we got. It's very anticlimactic. It feels like this one was taken from the Bills and not by Kansas City's talent.
Yep.
So that's just kind of my thoughts on it. But moving on to the Super Bowl, we've got coming up a week from tomorrow. It is February 1st as we're recording this. Super Bowl's February 9th. What are your thoughts on that game? Who do you have, and what do you see that playing out like?
Well, did you want to make those projections on this one, or save it to the next one, or maybe some thoughts on this one, a final prediction on the next one?
Yeah, we can always come up with scores and everything like that. I mean, obviously, not wishing anything on any players ill, but if we see a freak accident, if
Mhm.
Saquon injures, an ankle sprain in practice leading up to Super Bowl week, that's going to change the game. And so we can hold off on scores, but just what are your thoughts on the matchup that we got? I know it wasn't the matchup that the fans wanted, but do you think we're going to have a good game? I mean, what are you expecting?
Well, I think just like college football, it's not a matchup a lot of us really wanted in the college game. A lot of us didn't necessarily want Ohio State and Notre Dame outside of their fan bases. And I think a lot of us didn't want the Chiefs and the Eagles. But that said, it should still be a pretty good game. I think that the Chiefs will go all in to shut down Saquon, and if you can do that, and I think they are capable of slowing him down just at least a little bit. I think you're going to see a pretty even game, and it really could go either way, which I guess is kind of why I wouldn't have a prediction at this point, because with a few key adjustments, I could see this one being perfectly even, and I really, really, really hope that if we're in a perfectly even game, that, as you guys said, that the refs don't get to decide it, and we actually get to see things play out as it should.
Yep. I agree with you 100%. Um, I have my thoughts. I know who I want to win. Scores are going to, I'm like y'all, it's going to be a little bit harder to predict because, if somebody does get hurt or
Mhm.
you lose that key, not even just Barkley, but if you lose that key lineman or a couple of key linemen, you know, or on the other side of the ball, if you lose those couple of key defensive players, to whatever, it's, you know, I'd like to hold prediction until, maybe next week or whenever we film again. Um, Definitely not the game I wanted, but it's the game we get. So I still vote that we have a national holiday for the day after, so I don't have to go to work the next day because I'll be super tired, but that's okay. Um, so I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of opinions. I just hope the refs stay out of it.
Well, the one thing that I was thinking about going into this, and I think I had a conversation with one of you and maybe Kyle as well, that was shouted out a few moments ago. But one thing that we've seen is we put a lot of hope on Josh Allen to be the Chief Slayer. We really thought that he was going to be that guy that could step up and take it down. And maybe it's a testament to the Chiefs' defense and the way that they were able to game plan around his talents and things like that. So we have seen that the best option at quarterback was not able to overcome the Chiefs. But what about the best option at running back? A lot of times I have jerseys for players just because I like that player. Sometimes it's because they won me a fantasy championship. Sometimes it's just because I like them. Or a lot of times it's because they play for the Falcons and that's my team. So I get their jersey. But
Yeah.
there was a special correlation between the jersey that I wore today. So it's not Saquon Barkley. I do not have a Saquon Eagles jersey, but this is LaShawn McCoy. And I just wanted to send some good juju. Saquon, I am knighting you as my personal hero. I want to see if maybe the running back is what it takes to beat the Chiefs. If he can take over games like he has so often this year, he could be the one that takes us down and gives us a champion that's not the three-peated Kansas City Chiefs. I think we all in agreement we don't want to see the Chiefs three-peat. We don't want to see the Kelsey proposal to Taylor Swift on the
Oh
field after
god.
the game. Like all those betting odds that are placed, I don't want to see any of them hit.
Going back to the jersey, does that mean we'll see a Scattaboo jersey coming to White Widow Sports soon?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It just won't be me wearing it. There's a bigger Scattaboo fan on this podcast, and I
I think
think he's going to make something happen.
I'll be wearing it. It depends on where he goes, I guess. I
I was
wouldn't
about to
be
say, you let
opposed.
Scattaboo go to the Cowboys in the second round, it's game over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
true.
definitely be a thing. And I wouldn't mind getting a jersey of his, especially if he goes on to have a great career or just as a running joke. And no joke, he's a great player. So maybe that wasn't the right word, but just the fact that we've brought him up a few times. I
Every
wouldn't.
podcast.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to even getting an Arizona State jersey should he go to a team that just hate their jersey or just don't want to fork over NFL jersey money, which to be honest is pretty similar prices to college these days. There's not too much of a price difference there, but yeah,
And since he's been mentioned in every podcast, something fun uh, for our fans is if you find where we have Scattaboo's name in any one of our videos or every one of our videos, just leave us a comment of when we actually mentioned him. Was it at 4 minutes and 59 seconds, or was it later in the podcast like it is today? Or if you're, we do cut them up and make smaller clips. Just drop us a comment on when we mentioned them.
and being the first one to get that comment, and you could maybe win a prize. Not anytime soon, but if we grow to a certain size where we're in the position to give away a prize here or two, then that's certainly something you'll want to get the head start on.
Oh, I
Sure.
want to head start something else. I want to start a campaign of anybody that can get Scattaboo to follow our podcast. We want some
Yeah,
interaction with the player. We want a guest spot on here. We want to talk to him around the draft, maybe. I mean, just however quickly we can get him in contact with the podcast. Let's get him on here. Let's talk to him. Uh, I think that would be really cool. He would be our first player appearance.
I have a long shot contact that would know him. I as I may have previously mentioned on the introductions in here, I spent about 8 years in college athletics, sports media, and I did once interview to get a job at Arizona State. I was actually very close to getting a job. It actually didn't have anything to do with football, but there is someone that thought pretty highly of me in that program, and could never hurt to reach out to that guy, say, hey, remember our talk a while back? You wanna you wanna throw your star athlete of your entire school over to this growing podcast? That'd be appreciated. I wouldn't hold your breath, guys, but
Pull
anything
the
else
string,
would
get
be
them on
fun.
here.
Yeah.
I would love to do something like a player interview or something like that. Obviously, going on right now, you've got the Reese's Senior Bowl is over in Mobile, Alabama. That's really not that far from me.
Mhm.
Maybe in years future, that might be something that me or any one of us can go over there and start. I mean, they're open practices. Anybody can show up and
Oh
watch the
yeah.
practices, go to the game, stuff like that. But a lot of media passes get handed out right there to people who run sports podcasts because a lot of times these players are looking to do these interviews, asking about the draft process and thoughts on the team. And just, it's a very unique time for their lives. And you get a lot of really cool answers from them. So that might be something that we do in the future if there's interest.
And that is, Brad, as you said, that is easier than you think to just request a media pass. They are, as long as you go through the right avenues, they are willing to give those out pretty good, and just make the case for who you are and what you do. And it doesn't really matter how big or how small you are in your viewership. That is a possibility. So I like where your head's at.
Yep.
Definitely. It's just something I've thought about. It's always something I've wanted to do. But maybe now moving into a position to actually do that. I mean, I live
Mhm.
closer to Mobile than I ever have before.
Mhm.
And maybe this gives us an avenue for that level of content. So guys, let us know in the comments if that's something that you'd want to see us do, and maybe we'll work to make that happen in next year and the years going forward.
Mhm.
So obviously we've talked about our Super Bowl teams. I don't think anybody is at risk of losing their job coaching wise, but there have been some coaches that have lost their jobs already. So we have 7 head coaching vacancies for the 2025 year. 6 of those have already been filled. So we'll kind of go through some of those and talk about them. But what do you guys think? Maybe Brian, what is your favorite coaching hire so far and why?
Um, let's see. I think Pete Carroll's going to do a phenomenal job at the Raiders. He's a well respected coach. He does a good job. So I really like that one. I'm a Raiders fan, kind of a new Raiders fan, obviously with Bowers going over there and doing a phenomenal job this year. So I really think that's going to be a good one. Um, that's probably my favorite. I know there's several on here that's gotten uh, moved up. I know, did Dallas, did they get a new? I don't think they've hired. I know they fired. Did they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they did.
promoted their
Yeah,
offensive coordinator.
yeah, Chris. Let's talk about that hire they got as their coach this year. You're a Dallas fan.
Well, I'd rather come back to that and go along the same questions because I didn't have a different answer. Uh, if you were to ask me who I think is one of the better coaching hires, you've got a few that are offensive minded going to teams that need an offensive spark. You've got and we'll get into those here in a minute. You got a few defensive guys going to a place that needs a defensive spark. But with Pete Carroll, who I've met personally, by the way, on a school trip in college out to Seattle. With Pete Carroll, the way I see it is he is. Don't kill me, guys, if I get this wrong. I think he's one of only 3 coaches. One second. He's one of only 3 coaches in history to win a college football national championship and a Super Bowl. I think it's 3. I believe the others are uh, Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer. If I'm missing somebody, I apologize. Just go ahead and drop it in the comments. All that to say, Pete Carroll has succeeded everywhere he's been. And so I don't know I know he probably specializes in one area or another, but as an entire team, he brings success everywhere he's been, and I see no reason to believe that he won't with the Las Vegas Raiders. So, Brad.
I think what's real interesting about that landing spot specifically is Pete Carroll wasn't really on the radar of a lot of these teams. He wasn't a name that was brought up. He's 74 years old. A lot of
Right.
people thought that maybe he would stick around the sport almost as like a consultant, but he wouldn't have the responsibilities that come with being a head coach on a day-to-day level. But Tom Brady is apparently the driving force behind this move. Obviously, he is partial owner of the Raiders now, and a lot of accounts are that he's essentially running the team. He is the guy that's making all of their football decisions, and Pete Carroll was his guy. That was very much a Brady move. And to put it simply, in Brady, I trust. Brady knows what's going on in that team at every level. He understands team dynamics, not just player dynamics. And so I think if he's going to bat for Pete Carroll and saying, bring me this 74-year-old coach out of retirement, make him the guy, you're replacing Antonio Pierce, somebody that did not have head coaching experience, with somebody who's got a whole lot of not only experience, but success, as Chris was saying. I think that's a real interesting fit to see how quickly we can expedite turning the Raiders from a seller team to a contending team. Obviously, they've got to figure out the quarterback situation. We think that could happen coming up in the draft or free agency. I don't expect Aiden O'Connell to be their guy moving forward, but that's interesting. Touching on the New England Patriots, I think that they made one of the more predictable hires, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that they knew their guy. It made sense. It was a perfect fit. They brought in Mike Vrabel to replace Gerard Mayo after a single year. He was a linebacker for the team, spent 6 seasons as the head coach of the Titans, had a good winning record there, led them to 3 playoff appearances and a conference championship game with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. And I think what's really interesting about his hire is he's more of a defensive-minded coach. But he brought on a familiar face in Josh McDaniels for his 3rd stint in New England. Mac Jones, a lot of people don't think too fondly of right now, but he had his best year in the league as a rookie under Josh McDaniels. And if he can come in and revamp this offense and give Drake May a similar system to grow and develop in, I think that's a great move by the Patriots. But even that's not my favorite hire. My favorite one is actually what the Chicago Bears did. They fired Matt Eberflus after only 12 games. He went 4-8, brought in Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze as 2 top 10 draft picks. You had DJ Moore already there. They signed oh goodness, I'm blanking on his name. Apologize. But they brought in a receiver from the Chargers to come in. Chris, you might have to help me out on that.
Wasn't Keenan Allen, was it?
Yes, Keenan Allen. So you have a trio of talented receivers, and you bring in this stud rookie quarterback. Everybody thought that they were just going to hit the ground running, and they didn't. So they fired Eberflus after 12 games. I think they let their offensive coordinator run the team for the remainder of the season. Didn't really have spectacular results, which is why they're in the position that they are now. But they bring in Ben Johnson, who was the hottest name, even going back to last year before he returned to Detroit as their offensive coordinator. You see what they've done with Jared Goff, who I think is admittedly an inferior talent at the quarterback position to what Caleb Williams can be. And so I think that they are really looking for a brighter future with Ben Johnson there. That was my favorite hire. I think that they are going to be a very interesting team to watch next year.
Yeah. I've made it no secret that I'm no Caleb Williams fan. I have said that he'll be a bust. I still kind of believe that, but I do think they went out and got the best guy for that situation, offensive mind, to maybe give them an offensive identity. I think it's a great situation. You cover the Patriots a little bit. I think that he is the only let me check my notes here. I think he's the only other coach on the list right now outside of Pete Carroll that has head coaching experience in the NFL. Is that correct, Brett?
Are you talking about Ben Johnson?
I was talking about the Patriots.
Oh, yes, Vrabel.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Vrabel and Carroll. Everybody else
Yeah, okay, yeah.
are just coordinators that got promoted.
And if you just, yeah, as you already said, so I don't need to, go into the details again. He's been the Titans head coach for several years, and he had good success outside of a year or two. And even that wasn't like a 0-win team. So he's had decent success, and I think that they went with the right guy. Um, so it looks like we all sort of agree on those top three. We have a bottom three, and I don't know who would like
Well,
to.
one
Yeah,
more
go
I
ahead.
want to throw in there is the Liam Cohen out of going to Jacksonville. I know there was
Mhm.
a lot of going back and forth with Tampa Bay and stuff like that. Being from North Georgia, obviously I've followed Trevor Lawrence's career from when he was in high school at Cartersville to going over to Clemson. He did great at Clemson, and then going to Jacksonville. And I don't think he's seen the success yet, but I also
Mhm.
don't think he's been paired with the right coach
Right,
either.
right.
So it'll be interesting to see that combination, and does Trevor get a little bit better having that offensive minded coach come in and be his head coach. And I know he's had some, I can't remember his first year, that college coach that came in.
Urban Meyer.
Uh, yeah, Urban Meyer. And that was a big old flop. So it'll be interesting to see how that all transitions because, uh, uh, Baker Mayfield had a phenomenal year this year, and great success down there in Tampa Bay. So, does he bring that same over to the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence and kind of revitalize that team and
Yeah,
maybe bring them up, kind of like the Raiders, same situation. I think Raiders have a little bit bigger fan base than Jacksonville does, but Jacksonville is not bad. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see on that one. I don't say that's a good pick or a bad pick. It's just somewhere in the middle.
yeah, I'm right there with you. So we did talk about three that we all think are in a great position. This one's hard to pick. I like to be optimistic in this one. Jacksonville being the closest team to to my current location. Um, he does seem to have a level of optimism about his team. He did work with Baker Mayfield, and that offense looked great. Um, he looks very enthusiastic in some of the interviews I've seen. I don't think, like you said, Trevor Lawrence has maybe not had the career that he wants to yet, but I don't think it's time to pull the plug on him either.
Okay.
There's too much raw talent there, and it does shine through sometimes. So I'm trying to think of a guy to maybe compare, uh, like that's similar to his age. Can't come up with someone good right now. Josh Allen's not fair. Justin Herbert's not fair because they've obviously achieved more success. I think that given the right situation, the right tools, this may be a hot take, but hey, it says it in our description. I think that given the right tools and the right situation, Trevor Lawrence can be one of the better quarterbacks in the
Absolutely.
NFL. And, why not give Liam Cohen this shot to see if he can bring it out of him? And if in a few years from now no one's brought it out of him, we are going to have to talk about him kind of not living up to expectations. But at this point, I think uh, it's as good a shot as any.
Yeah, and we didn't ever talk about this on the podcast. It didn't make it, but at one point in time when we first started looking at the vacancies after coaches were getting fired before they had started filling those positions, I had gone through and ranked the vacancies in what I deemed an order of most desirable. And so, for instance, the number one most desirable job was the New England Patriots. And I had predicted that Mike Vrabel was going to be their guy. And it just turned out that that's what ended up happening. But the Patriots have by far and away the most cap space of any team in the league. They've got like $126 million. They've got the fourth overall pick in the draft. They've already got their quarterback in Drake May. They are ready to be built into a successful team. And as you go down that list, you don't see that same enthusiasm for a lot of these landing spots. So, two teams that I want to talk about now or really you can add in a third. We haven't touched on the New York Jets yet. They fired Robert Saleh, who I believe has taken over as the defensive coordinator at San Francisco, which was the position that he held prior to getting the head coaching job for the Jets, if I'm not mistaken. They're replacing him with Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator from the Lions. So the Lions are now having to replace both their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator in this cycle. And I think Glenn has actually poached some of his assistants from that staff and brought them in the form of promotions into the Jets regime now as well. But obviously, we touched on the Dallas Cowboys and that situation. I'll let Chris go into his thoughts on that. But the big question mark remaining in this conversation are the New Orleans Saints. They fired Dennis Allen, which I think is a move that a lot of people saw coming. The Saints were not having a good year. It seemed very dysfunctional. He just did not seem like he had a grasp on that locker room or anything like that. But they are the only team that has yet to hire a new head coach. So I kind of want to get y'all's thoughts on the Saints opening and maybe if you had any thoughts on who was going to fill that position or why it hasn't been filled yet.
I don't have too many thoughts on the Saints openings, but I will cover the last two here that we haven't really touched on as much because I don't have too much to go deep into it. So I'll let you guys expand on it. With the Jets, Aaron Glenn, from my research, I'm not a big head coach guy. I'll admit that to you guys. I do claim to be like a football historian, mostly college football historian. So I'm looking over here at my bookshelf. I can tell you all about Walter Camp and almost Alonzo Stagg and people like that. And so maybe, in 30 years, I'll be able to tell you about some of these current coaches. But anyway, Aaron Glenn, as far as I've seen, has never been a head coach. And I just don't see it working out. And maybe I'm just saying that because I haven't seen the Jets have much success at all in about 15 years. And I don't know if I believe it till I see it. Moving down to the Cowboys, Brian Schottenheimer. I'm almost speechless. That's just not good at all. The offensive coordinator on offense that wasn't that great, and maybe that's not all his fault. Your quarterback went down. You had some unexpected running back shifting. Some people might have expected Zeke to return to form, which may have been blind optimism because he's getting up there in age. You had the emergence of Rico Dowdle, and you had a few receivers go down. So maybe it's not all on him, but an offense struggles, and for whatever reason, and you don't see people elevating those guys to head coach, and I expect horrible things. And as a fan here, wherever it is on my screen, as a fan here, I'm just going to sit back and hope I'm wrong. And I'll let you guys expand a little more on that. I know you guys are bigger coach detail oriented. So please back me up or tell me why I'm wrong.
I'm like you. I'm not a big coach guy. I know, my brother Brad, he's very much analytics and
Oh, yeah.
and loves that kind of stuff. I'm not so much that way. I'm more of just a fan. I'm your average day. I watch it on Sunday. I root for who I want to root for, and that's about it. Now, one thing I have noticed, and this is not just a dig at the Cowboys, but some of the other teams as well. Atlanta is really bad, and this may be a topic for a different podcast, and I actually feel that it is. Um, at what point does the owner need to get out of the way? Congratulations, you've got a lot of money. You bought a football team. Get out of the way and let your GM and your coach run the football team. You're there to smile and wave and quit trying to be a part of it. Now, I do know Jerry Jones played. I know he played up in college. I don't know that he made it to the NFL, but like I said, at some point, get out of the way and you hired these people, let them make a decision, let them coach this football team, let the general managers deal with all the other stuff, the money, all the stuff on that end of it. Um, you hired them for a reason. Get out of the way.
Man,
And yeah, sure, go ahead.
may I interject here? Just to your point, unless I've missed something, Jerry Jones remains the GM as well.
And
Yes.
but again,
He hired himself.
and to what detriment? You know, what
Yeah,
good?
yeah, yeah.
How
It's not good.
let's talk about your record over the past I don't know 3, 4, 5 years, and
Mhm.
how well has that worked out for you?
It's been good
Yeah.
records, not good
How,
results.
how many Super Bowls have you won in the
Yeah,
past
yeah, not in
5 years?
30 years.
Yeah. So, like I'll go back to it, and Arthur Blank is the same way. You
Mhm.
know, so I'm not like I said, I'm not just throwing shade at the Cowboys. You know, Atlanta, which is one of my favorite teams. You know, uh, you almost have the same problem. You know, congratulations, Arthur Blank. You own Home Depot. You have a ton of money. You own one of my favorite teams. Mad respect for you to make it in this world. But at what point do you need to get out of the way and let let the people that you hire do the job you hired them to do?
Well, I don't mind throwing shade at the Cowboys. In fact, I think anytime Chris's phone goes off and he sees it's a text from me, he's got to think, what is it? Is this going to be podcast related? Is this going to be wrestling related? Or is he
Guess
sending
I'll
me another
excuse
meme about
myself
the
out now.
Cowboys? So a couple of the big hits this week was the punter for the Commanders, Tress Way, completed I think it was a 23-yard pass to backup rookie tight end Ben Sinnott. And that gives him more passing yards in conference championship games than Tony Romo and Dak Prescott combined, which is just a testament to the lack of postseason success that the Cowboys have had. And a lot of that is under Jerry Jones's watch. I think that this is what a lot of people believe is a phone it in kind of move. I think that Jerry Jones is looking for yes men, somebody that's not going to rock the boat, somebody that's not going to question him on his team building. Because when Dak goes down, what is the plan? When Cooper Rush is underperforming, what is the plan? Trey Lance doesn't see hardly any run at all, so why trade for him? When CD Lamb is playing through a bad shoulder injury, what is the plan? It just doesn't seem like there's a team building image in place that makes sense or lends itself to success. And when you don't have a general manager that's not also your owner, that's willing to step in and provide that change, when you've got a fan base that's clamoring for offseason moves to be made, there's a lot of questions that don't seem like they're going to have answers. Certainly not in 2025 with the promotion of Brian Schottenheimer. The most interesting thing that I've seen around this job is kind of like a little fan made theory of, are the Cowboys throwing in the towel already for 2025, tanking for Arch Manning in next year's draft? Because the one thing that Jerry Jones has always wanted is a Manning. He tried to sign Peyton Manning or trade for Peyton Manning. That didn't work. Eli Manning was having some contract negotiations. He tried to poach him from the Giants. That obviously didn't work out either. So is he looking at Arch Manning as his last chance to bring that name to his storied franchise, and then possibly making Schottenheimer a one and done head coach and replacing him with a Bill Belichick or a Nick Saban, and really starting their resurgence push in 2026? Chris, what would you think about that?
I mean, that's a big tale.
It's
Um,
a reach for sure, but I didn't know
it's a
if you'd like that, or
it's
if
a
it's just
re-
too far in the distance to really even be talked about.
it's a reach, but it's a reach that I wouldn't mind. Obviously, we've gotten to see Arch start a few games. There's tremendous talent there, and I think whenever he gets the chance to take over Texas, which I believe will be this year, right? Did Ewers declare?
Yeah, he's gone. He's
Yes.
Okay.
going pro.
Okay. So it'll be this year. I think he has tremendous talent. I think he could start this year. Um, I need to see a little more footage to go calling him the savior of a franchise. And no, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I like the kid. He's deceptively fast. Even you don't think of Manning's being fast until you go back to Archie way back in the day. And
Well,
but
his dad was similar to the same
well, yeah,
Archie
but
build.
He did play receiver though, his father. So yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
just as
he was.
far as athleticism goes, I mean, he does kind of take off after his father and grandfather more so
Yeah.
than his uncles. I
So
think that's
that's
notable.
a great a trait to have in there as well. So if I see, I'm sure I'll watch a good share of Texas games and get a better feel for it. But yeah, I wouldn't mind it if he grows into what I've seen so far. That's great. As far as a coach, I mean, I would prefer a Belichick or something over a Saban because Saban has tried out the NFL and it didn't go well. And if you just look at Saban's interviews, I think he's kind of fed up with coaching altogether. I don't see him coming back even for a certain amount of money. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that'll just come back for the money, especially at his age. So I think that part of it's the only part that I could see not being realistic. But yeah, if you had some a horrible season and Arch is there and that's some kind of grand plan, wouldn't be the worst grand plan that I've heard of. So
Well, and touching back to Arch Manning's athleticism and what that brings to the quarterback position, if you look at the four teams that just played in the NFL conference championship games and you look at the quarterbacks that are leading those teams, you've got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and rookie Jaden Daniels. Not that any of those guys are purely runners. I mean, obviously, you have to be able to throw the ball at a pro level, but it
mhm.
just shows you that having that mobility and that athleticism certainly doesn't hurt you and what it can do for your team and the success behind it. You don't see the statue quarterbacks that can't run, can't get those first downs, and make those extended plays. So, Arch Manning's definitely an interesting name to look forward to. Going into this next season and seeing what he can do as the full-time starter. We saw flashes of him at Texas this year while Ewers was hurt and subbing in certain games when Texas was struggling, putting him in bad position. I still think he was impressive.
Mhm.
But then circling back to our last team, the New Orleans Saints, one thing that I wanted to bring up before we wrap this up is the only reason why you go this late into the process without having a head coach is because your head coaching uh, target is not available yet. So it brings me up to two names because obviously we're down to two teams left that have coaches that can't be interviewed with Kansas City and Philadelphia. So I think the favorite of this group would be Kellen Moore. Uh,
Oh yeah.
you, former quarterback, former coach. He was offensive coordinator for Dallas for a little while. He had a stint working with Justin Herbert with the Chargers. And now he is the offensive coordinator for the Eagles and working with that offense. We've obviously seen what kind of success they can have.
Mhm.
And then the other name is Matt Nagy, who also has some head coaching experience. I believe he was with Chicago for a time, and he's the offensive coordinator for Kansas City right now. So those would be the two obvious names that I could think of, unless somebody really wanted to give Steve Spagnuolo another chance. But I do think the Saints are leaning towards the offensive coordinators and Kellen Moore being the favorite. What y'all know about Kellen Moore? Do you think that is a target or a fit, or what do you think the Saints do? Are they just a lost franchise at this point?
I think that's the move. Honestly, now that you
I
bring
don't.
it up, I think that's the move.
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty good move because I don't think they're a lost franchise. I think they had great success at the beginning of this season with Core
Mhm.
and Shaheed and some of the others. Alave, they got talent there, a lot of talent. Great running back. I think a lot of it is New Orleans got plagued with injuries like crazy, and it's just like one went to two, two went to four, four went to eight. It they couldn't they couldn't keep up with the onslaught. I don't think that was a coaching problem. I don't think it was an ownership problem. I just purely think it was just okay. It's just not your season. You're gonna have a ton of bad luck. So I do think the more as a head coach is very interesting with that amount of talent that they have. Do they come out and can they avoid injury? Can they come out hot and stay hot? And be a a, a contender, but pretty much lead the South because I know being an Atlanta fan and being in the South and Tampa Bay didn't get off to a great start. Atlanta, they were an okay start, but New Orleans came out so hot, and you're like, okay, this is done. They've won the South, and then like I said, the injuries just kind of mounted, and they just fell off really quick, almost as quick as they came on. So I do like that choice. I didn't think of it that way. So props for looking outside of the box and
Mhm.
finding that as a coaching decision.
Well, I think it's weird. As far as landing spots goes, I had ranked the Saints as my least desirable landing spot for coaches, and not just because I'm an Atlanta fan, but they are perennially in cap space purgatory. They are
Mhm.
always operating at a deficit that they have to weasel their way out of, just to get back into the black and out of the red before the deadline goes. They do have another top 10 pick. I think they draft seventh or eighth in this coming up draft, and along with the Panthers. And I mean, it's hard not to look at the NFC South and think that it's not up for grabs again next year. I don't think that there's a current favorite.
Mhm.
Obviously, you've got a lot of returning talent for Tampa Bay, but they lost their offensive coordinator for a second straight year. How is that going to affect Baker Mayfield and that offense? You're going to presumably be without Kirk Cousins in Atlanta as they look to build around Michael Penix Jr. They fired their defensive coordinator. They brought in a new defensive coordinator. Are you going to look to continue building up that side of the ball, and what does that mean for the playing style of Atlanta going into their second year with their new offensive coordinator? And then Carolina showed some signs of improvement once they got Bryce Young back into the starting lineup. Dave Canales is going to be going into another year as head coach, and that building experience and stuff like that. They're going to continue to add talent to that team. I mean, the NFC South is wide open, so I don't see why the Saints can't make a run for it if they do see improvement from the coaching, because I do think Dennis Allen was somewhat of an anchor.
Mhm.
But that being said, I mean, that's all I really had for this week. Can y'all think of anything else that we need to touch on in the world of sports?
Uh, just want to give a shout out to the Utah NHL team. Believe they finally got their name. I believe it was gonna. I think they had some name settled on like the Wabash or something. And I'm sorry if that's a cultural name or thing I don't understand, but I thought it sucked. And I think they settled on the Outlaws, which, as we mentioned at the end of, or maybe off air, they were trying to go for the Utah Yetis, which I thought was great, but the patent office didn't allow it, probably because of the Yeti coolers and thermoses and stuff. So, congratulations to the Utah Outlaws, it seems. Not a
Well,
horrible name.
I think what I saw, and I could be mistaken, it might be Outlaws. I think what I saw is that they had a fan vote that's
Hmm.
supposed to be going over a period of time. And after only 24 hours into that, the Wasatch or whatever that option
Yeah.
was, I guess, just doing so poorly that they pulled that option and
Yeah.
replaced it with the Outlaws as an option, but the fan vote is still going on. So
Yeah.
Outlaws is now an option, but I don't think they've fully decided on it. But we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. So they'll be voting on it. I don't think that's a horrible name. I don't think it's a great name. I think there are some cooler names out there. I really liked Yeti. Utah Yeti just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, yeah, Yeti is a cooler name. That's why they can't use it.
All right. I've had enough of this. It's time.
I think it was a great episode. I think everybody did a good job. I
Yeah.
hope our viewers think so as well.
Hmm.
Give us a comment. We do have a new platform this week. Kind of changed some things up, gave it a little different background, kind of rearranged where we're sitting in the room, and we may keep rearranging. So, give us your thoughts and comments on what you think about this new look, or if we need to change something. Maybe it's just terrible. But I appreciate everybody for the
And
likes, the
guys,
comments, the subs. Obviously, we want to uh, try to get more, like every other YouTuber. Uh, but I'd really like to see, what do y'all think? Maybe 10 subs this week. You think we can do that?
yeah, it'd be nice. And guys, also look out for a different type of video that should be coming this week. If not this week, definitely the next. It will maybe not. Maybe I don't want to give away the exact topic of it, but it'll be like a list style video where we have narration and some clips playing over it. That's our thought on basically one subject as opposed to us talking to each other. So to give you guys a little different style of content, and we'll be doing that every so often. Obviously focusing on this once a week, doing that as the inspiration and the projects get completed. I think you guys will really enjoy what we've put together so far. So be looking out for that here in the coming week, if not the next one.
Yeah, and as you guys know, we've touched on this. Obviously, we're a new channel. We are trying to build and grow and see how that goes. Engagement is a big part of that. Certainly, I appreciate everybody that's reached out either in person or by text and everything like that. But if you have thoughts on the podcast, whether they be positive or negative, you're not going to hurt our feelings. We're all pretty thick skinned. We've all grown up bullying each other. We've known each other enough time that you probably can't hurt our feelings with anything that you would want to say about us. So any thoughts that you have on the podcast, feel free to drop them in a comment. That engagement actually helps us more than a text would anyway. But the biggest thing that you could do is continue telling your friends about us. Anybody that you know that you think would be interested in this type of podcast, anybody that you think is a sports fan that would want to add to what we're doing here or just enjoy what we're already providing, definitely we'd appreciate you sending us over to them and seeing if we're really for them or anything to that effect. But continue to drop comments about what you want to see us talk about. If there's anything that we haven't breached as far as subjects go yet, obviously we'll be wrapping up pro football in form of games, but we've got draft content coming and things of that nature going ahead. So football's not going anywhere. But let us know what else you want us to talk about. That being said, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next week for episode 4.